Welcome to your weekly astrological forecast for the week of Monday, January 31st through Sunday, February 6th. And this week we have a new moon in Aquarius at 12 degrees Aquarius, and so that's it's reinforcing the Aquarian season, we like to say in the astrological community. So the first time Aquarius kind of begins is when the sun enters Aquarius. So that's already happened, but then now with this first new moon of the year in Aquarius, now we're really, really getting into those Aquarian themes and that Aquarian environment. So I'll talk about that here in just a moment. We also have Mercury turning direct this week at 24 degrees Capricorn. And once Mercury does that, we will have all planets direct, all planets moving forward. So we'll really start to have a lot of new developments and new things happening, just generally speaking. And I'll talk more about that as well. And this week as a whole, we have the moon waxing. So it'll start out with that new moon early in the week, and then it will be waxing from there, from Aquarius through Taurus. And this week as a whole, I think is interesting. So the focus is mainly on Capricorn and Aquarius. You can see here that's where all these planets are kind of clustered. Um, and the sun is of course in Aquarius, so that's definitely a primary focus, especially with the new moon. So a lot of focus is shifting to kind of our ideals, our aspirations, our what kind of future we'd like to have. Both Aquarius and Capricorn sort of involve themes of world building. So what are your plans? What are your goals? What kind of lifestyle would you like to live in the future? And how are you working toward that today, and tomorrow, and every day? That's the focus of Capricorn. And then Aquarius brings in more of, who do you have to cooperate with in order to build your future aspirations, your goals? What kind of, it becomes more social and it becomes more intellectual and idealistic. So what types of like concepts or people do you have to involve yourself with to have the sort of life you'd want to live? So these are a lot of the themes that are kind of I think we're mulling over and contesting with at this time. With Capricorn, Mercury is of course turning direct in Capricorn. Venus has just recently turned direct, and it's still pretty much stationary at 11 degrees Capricorn. So it's slowly going forward. And later this month, or excuse me, later in February, Mars and Venus will be pretty much conjunct almost the whole month. They'll be very, very close. So that brings a lot of desire and attraction, a lot of ambition and enjoyment in the realm of Capricorn. So we're really focusing on and developing our goals, our long-term plans, and I think for a lot of us there has been a lot of restructuring. So redefining the structure of our lives. That's Mercury retrograde in Capricorn. So going back, looking over our commitments, our investments, what types of plans do we have? What types of obligations do we have? We're trying to set down roots constantly, I think, to some extent, in whatever way that may look different for each of us. But we're all sort of looking into the future and tentatively trying to build some kind of security for our future selves. And I think a lot of that has had to change dramatically since Mercury and Venus have both been retrograde in this sign. So now as we get into February here, Venus has already turned direct. Mercury's turning direct this week. So now we've we've realized that there needs to be changes in these areas. Now is the time for implementing those changes and moving forward. So that's generally what I would say the focus is for this week. So let's get into it. So Monday, January 31st, moon is in Aquarius. It's very close to being a new moon. So the new moon will actually be very, very early on Tuesday. So it could also be very late on Monday, just depending on where you are in the world. And even if the new moon is on Tuesday where you are, like it is for me, we will all you'll already be feeling the effects, the themes of that. So right around a new moon, especially right before, just before a new moon, things are generally quiet and calm. My take on it, like I've said in the past, is that there is much happening, but it's not in a obvious way. There's not as much activity physically. So at a new moon, a conjunction like this, where the sun and the moon are preparing to conjoin, this is the very last part of the cycle. So it's actually, it ends up being very quiet and peaceful actually, but that's because all the manifestation is happening in a sort of non-physical way. So there may be things going on kind of behind the scenes that later we will look back and say, oh, okay, this cycle began then, with this new moon. But at the time, a lot of the time you don't, we're not feeling the full effects of this new cycle yet, especially before the new moon. But even on the new moon, the effects aren't tangible. You don't really always realize how dramatically something may have begun, at the very beginning, because there won't be dramatic new developments for this cycle until the first quarter moon, and that's about a week after the new moon, if that makes sense. So as for Monday, sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit here, but Monday is mostly quiet and calm. We're winding down, so there's no light to the moon at all, basically. The moon is totally dark and it's approaching Aquarius, so it's a time to kind of process things, especially since Mercury is still retrograde. It is slowing down, about to turn direct later this week, but generally, I would say with the moon positioned like this, we're sort of reflecting. We're allowing ourselves to be a little bit slower or a little bit more calm, a little bit more inquisitive, and maybe just questioning things and having a moment to pause, I would say. This is the least active time of the lunar cycle. The moon has no light to it. And you can contrast this from when the moon is full. People are very amped up, they're amplified, they're very active. And so this is the opposite of that. We get a little bit of rest now. It's almost like we can kind of sleep for these couple days. Not literally, but it's a time of, inactivity. And then while you're sort of sleeping or inactive, that's where you kind of are dreaming. Although you're not active as much physically, you are, it may be in a non-physical way, an emotional or mental way. You're contemplating that's where the manifestation comes that will bring in that new activity later in the cycle. Yeah, and that's pretty much what I have for Monday. So it's not the most active Monday ever. I think we might feel maybe a little bit groggy as we, start working or start doing whatever you do on Monday. Venus is pretty much stationary, so it did already go direct technically, but it's still at 11 degrees Capricorn. So, like I said, there may have been changes in our long-term finances or career situations, or just our commitments as well. Some type of long-term commitment involving maybe work or relationships. Those things may be sort of at a turning point where they're gradually kind of shifting gears and start, just very slowly beginning to move forward in a more linear, more active way. So Venus is kind of, representing this wealth and enjoyment in the realm of Capricorn, long-term commitments, structure. So we're gradually beginning to get some more direct, more activity there, but that's slow as well. So it's really a slow, gentle start to the week, I would say. Let's go forward to Tuesday, February 1st. So this is where technically Eastern Standard Time we have the new moon very, very early, pretty much just after midnight, so very early on Tuesday morning. And the main thing I would say for this new moon is that it's very close to Saturn. So I can actually go to close to the exact chart for it here. You can see 1 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, moon is conjunct the sun at 12 degrees Aquarius. And so just that in itself, this is a new beginning for Aquarius. So again, Aquarius rules. I've said before, all the air signs are sort of they almost contradict themselves. They're multifaceted, and each glyph has two lines in it, and so I think there's a lot of meaning to that. It's almost like there's a duality in each air sign, I think is what I'm trying to say. For Aquarius, the duality is self versus the group. Aquarius is known to be so eccentric and unique and different, but at the same time, they can be conventional as well. I think that side of Aquarius is underrepresented in modern astrology. Aquarius is ruled by Saturn. It does have a lot to do with tradition, and Aquarius can be revolutionary and rebellious, but it can also be conservative. It can be mild mannered and just easygoing and by the book as well. And so really there's this combination of how do I represent myself? How do I express myself for all that I am, for all of my uniqueness, for all the weird attributes, anything that might differ from the group or be unpopular? How do I honor that, but simultaneously also honor the group? Because Aquarius is very much focused on, groups. It's the sign of groups, of society, of the bigger picture. It's always saying the bigger picture, so the far future, or looking at things holistically, thinking about the group. So how do you honor yourself and express yourself, in all that who you are, and but also honor the group, honor structure of society, honor the big picture and the far future, and how you affect other people. How do you honor both of those without compromising? With giving nothing, and fully honoring both sides. That's the challenge that is in Aquarius, and so that's sort of a theme that comes up for all of us, I think, in Aquarius season, and especially beginning with this Aquarius new moon. So just a little bit more of a general way to put it is this could represent new beginnings involving our self-expression, but also new beginnings with groups. So how do we affiliate with groups? What groups do we affiliate ourselves with? There can be sort of initiation with any types of groups or organizations, basically. And Aquarius also rules the internet, and especially now, we often our groups and our organizations have to do with online groups or interactions. Aquarius rules technology as well, so that it can pertain to that. So new moon, there's new beginnings with all of these. But remember what I said, that it's not, things aren't dramatically, coming into this plane, in a very fiery way for a new moon. New moon is where you plant the seeds. The seeds have not sprouted yet. The seeds will sprout on the first quarter moon. That's where you really see what you've planted, and it makes room for itself. It disturbs the status quo. That's later. Right now are just these kind of humble beginnings, if you will. And this new moon is conjunct Saturn with an orb of 3 degrees. It's definitely not exact, but it's pretty close. You can see here. Yeah, orb of almost exactly 3 degrees. So this sort of, it fuses, not exactly, but pretty close. It fuses the energies of Saturn into this new moon. And being in Aquarius, this new moon is ruled by Saturn anyway. So this is a very Saturnian new moon, meaning that we experience the energies of Saturn. So this means that there's a weight to things. There's a heaviness. There's a challenge. Saturn is hard. It asks us to grow and to be mature, to be wise, and to be self-responsible, to own our own circumstances, and to work hard for what we have. It doesn't. Saturn is not evil. It's not all bad. It does reward you if you are responsible for yourself and mature and wise. I've experienced that very profoundly myself. So I don't want to say it's all doom and gloom, but there is a heaviness to this, because we do, it's asking us to be more responsible, to be more aware of ourselves. And this is especially pertaining to those ideals that I mentioned before. So, what are our responsibilities with groups that we affiliate ourselves with? So this could be your work, could even be your family or your tribe, your community. What kind of debts do we have with our community, or what obligations do we have? And again, this is all part of representing ourselves with our community, honoring each other, honoring, cooperating with others, but also not compromising, also being completely honest. Aquarius is known for its bluntness, bringing all of ourselves and our eccentricities to the table. There's a challenge in all of this. All this is very challenging. It can sound easy, but these are some challenging themes. So anyway, so Tuesday could be a little bit heavier, and again, this is all Monday and Tuesday. I really don't see as very active days. These are a little bit more slower. We might feel a little bit more groggy, or even on the more negative side of this, it could feel kind of depressing or challenging. Things could feel delayed because there's so much Saturnian energy right now. Saturn makes things slower. It asks us to take our time, and especially with Mercury retrograde. The beginning of this week is really about being thorough. We really want to be thorough with everything. I feel like even this forecast itself is taking a long time for me to get into these days here, but so that's maybe kind of fitting. But But yeah, that's generally the energy. So on the negative side, it could be maybe depressing, challenging, heavy. It can feel stressful because there's so much weight, so much responsibility. And this, it's not the time to have a lot of fun immediately. With all the Saturn energies, the focus is on the future. So it's not always the most fun energy to experience, but the reward, the silver lining or the joy in it is in the long term, is investing in things. And I think it's kind of sanguine or or somber. We have to appreciate things. We have to be humble. Saturn asks us to be humble and to be grateful. You know, so it's a little bit stoic. It's not the most fun energy, but it's a gradual process. I think beginning this week, and I think it can be beautiful if we have taken ownership for ourselves, been responsible, been honest, and are working hard for what we have and are grateful. Um, this sounds, so conservative or something, but that's generally what the energy is for Monday and for Tuesday as well here. Going into Wednesday, so things do change actually quite a bit going into a little bit later this week. So um, let's see, let me go forward to around midday here. So Moon will enter Pisces on Wednesday, and I really love this. I think this is really beautiful for a couple reasons. One, I always say that the moon is generally very fitting in Pisces. It's not in domicile or exalted, but Pisces is such an intuitive, kind of emotional sign. It's sensitive, sensual. It likes to kind of blend in with its surroundings and to see the subtle things. It likes to be ambiguous. So all of those themes really match up with what the moon represents. The moon in this context also represents our sort of collective consciousness, where we are emotionally and where our focus is day by day, sort of. Um, and so this does allow us to be a little bit more softer, more gentle, more intuitive, and this is excellent when we combine it with all that Saturn energy that I talked about for Monday and Tuesday. It does continue for Wednesday, but then we incorporate this Piscean moon, and especially as the moon approaches Jupiter here. Jupiter is in domicile in Pisces, so it's very strong, and it's bringing this abundance and this, I don't know, almost like spiritual abundance. Being in Pisces, it's like an emotional or spiritual abundance, kind of like an abundance that comes when you have clarity and peace with the world or with the universe. um, if that makes sense. So just a general feeling of well-being and abundance. That's, I think, what Jupiter in Pisces would bring, especially once the moon crosses that. And then combining all that with these heavy Saturnian energies, we already have that kind of stoic energy where we have to look into the future and be accountable and all that, which can be heavy but also potentially rewarding. But when we combine all that with these kind of intuitive, more flowing, more creative, moon and Pisces energies on Wednesday, that is, I'm almost picturing like an explosion, because it's almost like combining the masculine with the feminine. It almost gives birth to something else entirely, because you're combining two very complementary yet almost kind of opposing energies. You're combining the structure with the flow or the creativity, creation. So this is very, very beautiful, especially in regard to gaining clarity of our circumstances, of our world, whether that be our personal circumstances or maybe more abstract, looking at the whole world. Just gaining that clarity, um, and or also applying that clarity onto our long-term future plans. That's really excellent for the combination of the Saturn energy with the Pisces moon here. So yeah, really beautiful for making new plans going forward. Maybe tentatively, since Mercury is still retrograde, but really kind of gaining awareness and um, gaining awareness that kind of secures how we are, like, in the universe. Like, I'm having trouble articulating it, but like, there's this. It's almost like all the pieces kind of coming together. Like, once you have, you've taken responsibility for yourself, ideally at this point, and you're thinking about the long term future, and you're willing to work for things, you're willing to adapt to changes. and then combining that with, a sense of curiosity or openness to the world. That's kind of what's necessary for this sense of serenity, that I think we have an opportunity to have Wednesday. So I know I'm getting a little bit abstract here, but Wednesday does look really generally positive here. The moon is also gaining light. It's probably pretty dark still, not really visible, but it's beginning to become a sliver, on Wednesday here. So we have this kind of really beautiful lunar energy coming into the mix here, allowing us to be a little bit more creative and idealistic, in addition to this kind of more heavy energy. Okay, and then going forward to Thursday, February 3rd, moon is still in Pisces, and it's approaching Neptune, which is also in domicile in Pisces in modern astrology here. So this too is why I like the moon in Pisces, because with Neptune and Jupiter there, both are very strong in Pisces, and the moon is as well. And so I think it is really great for allowing us to be more creative, more open to each other, open to the world, more understanding. Pisces kind of has a lot of that as well. Being able to just sort of listen and observe and understand. That's really powerful when combined with the Capricornian discipline and, wanting to make things pragmatic and sensible and applying that to the future and, putting in the work. Combining the hardworking discipline of Capricorn with the sensitivity, creation, and flow and intuition of Pisces is unstoppable. So that's really excellent here. And I just say Capricorn because we do have Mercury, Venus, and Mars in Capricorn. And Saturn is very much to do with the energy of Capricorn. So anyway, so those are the general energies here. But also Thursday, February 3rd, Mercury turns direct here. So, okay, so Mercury turning direct, like I've said before, planets don't instantly turn direct. It takes time. So Mercury has gradually come to a standstill at 24 degrees Capricorn. It will hover there for a couple of days where it's, really hardly moving at all, and then it will gradually move forward. But right around this time of February 3rd, Mercury is stationary, so it's not really moving. So that intensifies everything that it rules over, everything that it is associated with. So Mercury is associated with technology, communications, how we think, how we communicate. Also, I like to say the daily rhythm of things. So, Mercury rules short distance travel. So it almost rules like the energy of errands, different things that you're doing today, interactions that you're having with different people, traveling to different parts of your neighborhood or city or what have you. All of that is Mercury. So all of that is being intensified right around this day, basically. So this can be kind of dysfunctional. It can also lead to, it can be good or bad. Having communication be intensified can be good. There can be a lot of very direct communication, no pun intended. But at the same time, it can be dysfunctional because Mercury turning direct, it's changing directions, literally from our point of view on Earth. So, changing directions like this, it is dysfunctional because, whenever Mercury turns retrograde, it has that reputation for being dysfunctional because we're not used to it. We want things to be, linear, especially in our society. We want things to be productive and linear all the time. So when Mercury changes directions and asks us to be more, slower or more intuitive, maybe less physically active, we don't like that. We don't want to adapt to that. But even after a Mercury retrograde period like this, I think we almost begin to get used to that retrograde motion. But then now it turns direct, and so now we have to get used to that change in the rhythm of things, the rhythm of the day, yet again here. So that can be dysfunctional. There can be changes in, especially on Thursday, changes to plans needing to be done, or maybe dysfunctional travel, because it's almost like the rhythm of things is kind of out of sync, or we're out of sync with the rhythm, I guess you could say. But this is good because it marks a turning point. It means that we've gone back, hopefully or ideally by now, we've gone back and gone over the things that we had maybe neglected before involving our long-term plans, our commitments, the structure of our lives, etc. All of that we've kind of hopefully revisited by now and gained some perspective and maybe made some changes, made some edits or tweaks to those areas of our lives. And now we're ready, as Mercury turns direct, to apply what we've learned and to proceed, to go forward and move on with these new plans that we have. So that's generally the focus, and I'm feeling that very literally, being so ruled by Mercury. Okay, going forward to Friday, February 4th, Moon enters Aries. So this is, of course, a major shift to the focus. Um, Aries is, of course, very different than Pisces. Pisces is more, insightful or not intellectual. I meant more like intuitive and kind of reflective and all that. It's more sensitive and emotional. Aries is the beginning. Pisces is the end, where we're kind of concluding everything and integrating everything. Aries is initiation, and so it's go time now. Things are much more black and white, much more active. It's fire. It's initiation. It's beginnings. So we do have that energy for the next couple of days here as Moon enters Aries on Friday. And I like this as well. I said I liked Moon in Pisces, but I like Moon in Aries as well for this context, because with the Sun in Aquarius, the Moon will have a waxing sextile to the Sun as it gets a little bit deeper into Aries here. So that's always a really beautiful, harmonious energy. Moon gaining that light, and it's beautiful to see as well. If you see it at this time, the Moon will be a waxing crescent moon. So it's beautiful to see and beautiful to experience. Things generally flow smoothly when you have this aspect between the Sun and the Moon. Things are just, it's almost like the general tone of the day is more harmonious, more flowing smoothly. So that's really excellent. And like I touched on before, all the planets are going direct now as well. So there's more activity happening, more, things are literally happening more directly, more linearly, more forwardly. There's not as many delays now. So there's more obvious activity going on. It's not so subtle. It's not like things are happening behind the scenes, and even some of these delays I think may be lessened at this time. However, I should mention on Friday there's also Sun will pass over Saturn at 15 degrees. It's like at the very last part of 15 degrees Aquarius. So this in itself can. Well, let me just explain. So Saturn infuses its energies with the Sun as the Sun passes over Saturn. And the Sun, which rules it also rules the energy of the day, kind of like the Moon as well. They both sort of do, I would say. The Sun rules kind of our activity during the day. I would say Sun, Moon, and Mercury all kind of have their parts in that, if you will. So Sun combining with Saturn, so we almost like the energies of Saturn are amplified basically and applied to Friday very strongly. So again, this brings up some of those themes that I mentioned earlier this week of it's a heaviness. It is heavy, it can feel depressing, but again, if we are responsible, we can be rewarded. But this is the type of reward that you work for, and this does apply to ideas, concepts, and to our social connections. All these kind of air concepts of ideas and people. Being in Aquarius. So again, what are your responsibilities to your community, to your tribe, so to speak, to the groups that you affiliate yourself with, and how do you be fair with them and represent yourself honestly, for all your uniqueness. How do you allow that to shine and allow that to naturally fit in, to find its place into the group, and not to clash with the group, but to actually contribute to it, basically. These are the challenges that we deal with, or challenges, but also opportunities that we contend with in Aquarius, and especially with Saturn conjunct the Sun here. This adds this focus to the day on Friday here. So definitely challenging, but also potentially rewarding if we are truthful and disciplined and willing to put into the work for this kind of respect or these accomplishments in these areas. And then lastly, on Friday, we have Mars sextiling Jupiter. So Mars at 8 degrees Capricorn, sextiling Jupiter at 8 degrees Pisces. This is excellent. This is beautiful as well. This touches on that other theme I was talking about earlier this week of combining Capricorn with Pisces, which is so powerful. Capricornian discipline with Piscean flow or creativity. Combining both of those, having both of those is beautiful. And these two planets are perfect to represent these as well. Mars, which represents, our drive, our ambition, our desire to succeed and to get what we want. Especially being exalted in Capricorn, being very strong there. That's combining with Jupiter, which is more lofty, more idealistic, more philosophical, and being in Pisces where it's in domicile. So Jupiter is very strong and very at home in Pisces as well, just like Mars is in Capricorn. So combining both of these, it is a sextile. So the sextile is not the most strong aspect by any means. It is a little bit subtle, but it is definitely a sense of harmoniousness and well-being here. And again, a lot of it does, pertain to our desires and our goals, especially with Mars. So sort of all of our ambition, our collective ambition is very harmonious right now. Not only being exalted in Capricorn, Mars exalted in Capricorn, but also making the sextile with Jupiter, which brings abundance and good fortune, and Jupiter's in domicile. It's almost like these two energies, these two planets are having this very excellent conversation. Both of them are feeling very much in their own element. Both of them are in high spirits, and they're having this excellent dialogue here. So we really can only benefit from that. I can almost not even think of a downside. I guess one downside is that the downside is inspiration, which doesn't sound like a downside, but Jupiter in Pisces is almost like so inspired. It's so creative. It's so open to just the world and to life in general. It's almost like it just can't be defeated. It's almost invincible because with that energy, you can experience anything. You can learn from anything. It's hard to explain, but combining that with Mars and Capricorn, which is so ambitious and decisive and wanting to go out and conquer and claim and to be the boss, I could see how things could maybe go out of hand. It's almost like too much of a good thing. We could be maybe overzealous, I almost want to say. Also over ambitious. Let's see. Let me just look up the word zealous because sometimes words come to me. Zeal, that doesn't really define. I'm sorry, I'm going on a tangent. Just bear with me here. Yes. Okay. Perfect. Yeah. Sometimes words come to me and they are perfect. So great energy or enthusiasm in pursuit of a cause or an objective. That is true. I think combining these energies, we might feel almost overly inspired and what we all experience these things differently. So, what I am feeling inspired to go pursue or to conquer may be very different from what you are, And so that's really the only downside I could possibly think of with this energy, that we may kind of clash because we're almost kind of so feeling what we're doing. We're so into what our goals are, what our dreams are, that we may actually clash with one another potentially. But really, other than that, it's really beautiful energy. And again, there's this theme of gaining clarity in the immediate moment to know how to proceed in the long-term future. That's a huge theme for this week, which is really beautiful, and it almost makes me excited. So that's really nice. Okay, going forward to Saturday, February 5th. Moon is still in Aries, and Moon actually crosses over Chiron in Aries, and so this does a couple things. This amplifies the energies of Chiron in Aries. Chiron in Aries is focused on our own kind of personal wounds and our traumas, our history, if you will, and such. It's a lot of difficult themes, and being in Aries, it kind of gets broadcasted out. It gets amplified. It's very loud, maybe even belligerent at times, I would say, Chiron in Aries. And so the moon crossing over Chiron can allow us to be, or can lead us to be more vocal with things that are actually very deep, to us. Things are very personal. And like I've said before with Chiron and Aries, this can be good or bad. It can be good to, represent ourselves and to be honest with who we are and to make ourselves understood. And doing that, if when we're all doing that, it allows us to understand one another as well. So that's really excellent, and this can lead to, I don't know, therapeutic experiences, healing experiences. But at the same time, it can be belligerent. It doesn't have to be productive necessarily. We could all just be kind of like before. I compared it to us just all being kind of crying babies at the same time. It's almost like there's no one there to take care of all of us if we're just, crying or releasing these things all at the same time. So there is kind of all of these kind of potentials with Moon crossing over Chiron and Aries. It's not super extreme. It's just the Moon, so this is really brief. It's mostly really just applying to Saturday. There's a loose sextile to the Sun, though, as the Moon crosses over Chiron, and then later in the day, the Moon will make that exact sextile. So that was that really harmonious energy that I talked about that started on Friday when the Moon entered Aries. Now that kind of comes to a head. And this just represents we're at this part of the lunar cycle where things are beginning. But I don't know, there's this kind of sweet spot here with this crescent moon. And being in Aries with the Sun in Aquarius, the focus is very much on our uniqueness and being kind of blunt or not afraid to be rebellious or different. That's the thread that links Aries to Aquarius. These are very individualistic signs. Aquarius, of course, rules the group as well. But when we're combining Sun and Aquarius with Moon and Aries, that's the side that gets brought out more and accentuated is the rebelliousness, the individuality, not being afraid to be completely different or completely on a different page than everyone else. We're all on our own page, I guess. But this is beautiful. It's almost like a kind of friendly aspect here with the sextile. It is kind of sweet or harmonious. So this might be an excellent opportunity to maybe be a little bit more rebellious or outgoing. It really looks beautiful for, especially considering it's a weekend. It looks good for doing pretty much whatever. I think the sky's the limit when you have Moon and Aries, when you have such individualistic energies. As long as you're doing what you yourself want to do, you would be supported by Moon and Aries, especially with the sextile to the Sun in Aquarius. I think especially if it involves something kind of outgoing or adventurous, something more active. Moon and Aries likes to be active, and it does kind of seek gratification. It's so in touch with its own desires and its immediate wants that is the focus. So yeah, it looks like a really great start to the weekend for doing whatever, for being productive or doing something kind of social, or on your own too. Aries likes to be outgoing with other people, but it is very individualistic. So yeah, I guess really looks like a beautiful start to the weekend, especially after that initial aspect with Chiron. So maybe a little bit more emotional at the beginning of Saturday, but by Saturday evening and night, at least here Eastern Standard Time or in that vicinity, does look really beautiful later on Saturday. Going to Sunday, February 6th, Moon enters Taurus, and you can see here it's exactly entering into Taurus around 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And we also have Mars squaring Chiron, which is interesting because the Moon just crossed over Chiron the day before. Now Mars is making the square aspect. So this is a little bit different. So Mars being in Capricorn, making that 90-degree aspect with Chiron and Aries. This does look sort of tense to me. Chiron is in Aries, which is ruled by Mars, and so Mars is kind of, I would say, the more strong element here, especially because Mars is exalted in Capricorn, and Chiron is not in Aries. And so I almost see this as a clash between, government hierarchy, leaders, some people in leadership positions, again, the government, police, maybe, all that is represented by Capricorn, and that has the upper hand. That is clashing with Chiron and Aries, which is the individual, an individual who perhaps has been hurt in the past or who feels wounded or victimized. There's almost this clash there. So I do see some potential on Sunday for, I don't know, some kind of clash there. I've said before I associate Chiron and Aries with protests, very much so. So I almost could see maybe some protests emerging around the world. But again, like I said, the government or whoever's in charge, um, I almost see this as like an insurrection, and I don't want to go that far as to say I don't think this is major enough that countries will rise and fall or what have you. But I'm comparing this to an insurrection where Mars and Capricorn rules. That signifies whoever's been in control, and Chiron and Aries is kind of whoever is currently not in control, whoever feels victimized or is kind of rebelling against the authority. But in this case, the authority has the upper hand. They have the power. Mars is exalted and rules over Chiron. So the authority, the status quo, the structure of society, the king or the government or the police or whoever's in charge, whoever's the boss, they are ultimately in control. And so it's up to them how this would be resolved here. But other than that, I think it's a generally pretty good day for most of us here. Moon enters Taurus, where this is really beautiful as well. Now it will begin to start to square the sun, so it is a tense aspect. However, the moon is exalted in Taurus, so this is generally an emotionally calm place when the moon enters Taurus. Generally speaking, it's usually harmonious. This is a little bit of a mixed bag though on Sunday. I think generally the tempo or the rhythm, the feeling of the day does become maybe more grounded and harmonious with the moon in Taurus, but this is disruptive. It's almost out of place. It doesn't match up with the sun in Aquarius, and then also we have that Mars square Chiron. So it's a mixed bag. I think we can definitely enjoy ourselves. It doesn't look too stressful or ominous, but at the same time there could be a little bit of disruption there, and maybe some kind of maybe us just being a little bit. I think we could all be maybe a little bit stubborn on Sunday. We might be kind of set in our own ways and not empathizing with one another as much as we could. Moon and Taurus would usually be ideal for that, but all things considered, it's not matching up. It's almost like there is that kind of potential. We do get a little bit of that security in our emotions and ourselves, and that ability to empathize. But at the same time, the whole context is more scattered, more disruptive, and all the planets are direct too, so there's so much new things happening in general, and then now we get a couple clashes going on, a couple minor clashes. So I think Sunday could be a mixed bag. It can be enjoyable, but also a little bit tense as we prepare for the first quarter moon that will happen as well. So that's what I have for this week. Hopefully that makes sense. Hopefully that helps. I know I rambled on quite a bit there, but there were some pretty complex themes, especially early in the week. That's where it gets interesting because some of these energies that aren't overtly active, if you actually kind of delve into them, those are actually the most complex. So it's almost like, earlier in the week around the new moon, things aren't happening as directly, and yet I had so much to say about it because when you really delve into it, there's actually a lot going on. It's just more subtle, complex, ambiguous, etc. So it's interesting kind of how that works. But stay tuned next week because Venus and Mars are approaching each other here. Venus is like gradually turning direct still, and Mars, which usually travels slower than Venus, is catching up to her. And so this really beautiful thing will happen for most of the rest of February, where Mars and Venus will be pretty much conjunct through most of the month in Capricorn. So that's going to be really beautiful, and I'll talk about that next week. Next week we also have a first quarter moon in Taurus, and we have Mercury conjoining Pluto. So yeah, definitely stay tuned. Very interesting times. I hope that helps, and I hope you have a good day. And if you feel the need to contact me, you can email me at manic.mercurian@gmail.com. Thanks for watching. I'll see you later.